Good afternoon and welcome to UCEA YouTube Live. This is Daniel Moragas, Graduate Research Assistant and Doctoral Student at UCEA Headquarters at the University of Virginia. I am here today to interview Dr. Gerardo López as part of his candidacy for UCEA President. Today, listeners will be hearing from Dr. López, Professor in the Department of Educational Leadership and Policy at the University of Utah. His research focuses on immigration, parent-family involvement, and critical emancipatory leadership practices. Let's begin with the first question. Please tell us about your background and your work as it relates to UCEA's mission and goals.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. Before I begin, I think it's important for me to thank Michelle Young, members of the Executive Committee, for just being such great colleagues. I think that being a member of the Executive Committee is a critical role within the organization, and the opportunity to run for UCEA president is a very important role because the president gets to work closely with the executive director, with the entire Executive Committee, and with the plenum, all in the interest of moving the organization forward. I am deeply humbled to have served as a member of the Executive Committee. I think being a member of the Executive Committee has given me a bird's eye view into the organization. I have learned just an incredible amount just being on the EC, and I feel really honored to work with just such incredible colleagues, both on the EC as well as on the plenum. So regarding your question, in terms of my own background and how it relates to UCEA's mission and goals, I think that UCEA as a consortium has three major kind of fundamental goals, if you will, within the broader mission of advancing educational leadership preparation and practice. I think the first one is to engage in high quality research. And the second is to improve the preparation of educational leadership and professors. And the third is to influence educational policy. I think that my background and work has connected to all three of those particular goals. For starters, my work has focused on school community relations, especially the role, if you will, of Latino parents in the educational lives of their children. I've done that work since I graduated from my own doctoral program at the University of Texas and in 1999, and I've expanded that research interest on parent involvement into broader issues of immigration. And that really has been my focus for the past 10 years or so. Given the demographic changes of this country and the kind of current political landscape, both of these issues, parent involvement and issues of immigration, I think are placing enhanced demands on educational leaders, especially in this day and age. I think my scholarship not only aims to educate educational leaders about this population, but more importantly, to get pre-service as well as in-service leaders to really think critically about their own policies and practices and how those policies and practices might promote or inhibit the educational success of this particular population. So I do think that my own research in these two areas directly connects to the three primary goals of UCEA.
Thank you. Dr. López, you have served for several years as a plenary session representative. Tell us about your engagement in UCEA's governance.
Woo! I think since in the 20 years that I've been a member of this organization, first as a grad student and then as a junior and a tenured professor, I have served on various roles, and I have worn multiple hats within UCEA. I have been a plenum rep. I've served on editorial boards of most, if not all, of the journals published by UCEA. I've been a Jackson Scholar Mentor. I was the interim editor of the Journal of Cases. I was the co-editor of the UCEA Review, and I'm currently serving as the editor of Educational Administration Quarterly as of February of this year, 2018. But I would say that out of all of these roles, no role has been as exciting and as rewarding as having served on the executive committee. Being on the executive committee has provided me, like I said before, a bird's eye view of the organization, and it's really given me kind of a sneak peek into the inner workings of UCEA as an organization beyond the conference. And being on the EC, I've participated in some really powerful discussions, and have seen the tremendous care and the sense of responsibility and this kind of ethic, moral and ethic imperative that each member of the executive committee brings to bear, in order to ensure that the organization is not only moving forward in a positive direction, but is remaining relevant and responsible to the profession, as well as the constituents that we serve. And the constituents that we serve are many and varied. But prior to serving on the executive committee, I was a member of the plenum for 8 years, from 2002 to 2009. And so I'm very familiar with the governance structure and the important role that each of us plays in improving the field and moving the profession forward. So I think I've worn multiple hats, but I've also have gotten the chance to see the inner workings of UCEA and the role, the importance of UCEA's governance in moving the organization forward.
Thank you. In what other ways have you been engaged in UCEA?
Well, I think that you name it, I've probably done it within UCEA. I've served on ad hoc committees. I've served on task forces. I've served on everything from what is formal to what is informal. In terms of the formal, I've served on award committees, on nomination committees, etc. As a member of the executive committee, we are responsible for reviewing new member applications, for conducting site visits to organizations that want to be a member of UCEA. We draft policies, etc. For the broader plenum and that for the plenum to consider. So I'm also involved right now, actually, in the selection of our new executive director, which is an exciting opportunity to select the person who's going to lead UCEA into the future. So I think that I've been involved in UCEA in so many different ways, and the reason why I get involved in UCEA and have gotten involved so much is because UCEA has played a central role in my own academic and professional development, and it's just my way of giving back. It is service, but it's also a way of saying, thank you to the organization that's done so much for me since the time I was a graduate student.
I think you've touched on this already, but can you discuss with us your scholarship, research projects, teaching, and/or service that can inform the work of UCEA, particularly the work of the executive committee?
I think the bulk of my work centers around the importance of community, and the need to include a range of voices at the proverbial decision-making table. To those who are listening and are familiar with my scholarship, they know that my work on parent involvement that I've been doing for the past 20 years is really focused on including non-traditional voices at the table. It's what I've always preached. It's what I inherently believe in. It's how I center my scholarship. It's how I center my research. It's how I center my teaching. It's how I center my service. I not only believe in the efficacy of community, but I believe in the importance of working as a community. And I think that it's an ethic that I apply not just to my my research and scholarship, but my own leadership style. When I was department chair at the University of Utah, I try to involve others, not only in the decision-making process, but in identifying kind of the problems that we had as a department and in figuring out ways to tackle those problems or issues. And I think that the scholarship that I do in school community relations and the importance of working as a community kind of has really given me that grounding, that more holistic understanding of the importance of including a range of voices, especially those that are historically marginalized, in all facets of the decision-making process. And that's what I think I bring, not just to my work within UCEA, but my work on the executive committee and the need to include a range of voices in that process.
Yeah, I have one final question for you. Share the reasons why you have chosen to run for UCEA president and your vision for the future of UCEA.
I think the UCEA president not only leads UCEA in the governance, but is someone who embodies the spirit of commitment to leadership and quality leadership that the organization not only espouses, but wants to promote across the country and across the world. And I think that we are, as a global society, at this particular historical moment, I think what we're seeing is a crisis in leadership. It's a crisis of global proportions, and it's a crisis that is undergirded by a concentration of capital into fewer and fewer hands. And it sounds like I'm going on a tangent, but I'm not. I'll bring it back to education. But what we're seeing around the world when it comes to leadership, I think what we're seeing this, if you look at the elections, for example, national elections that are happening across the world, we're seeing the election of more extreme, more ultra-conservative leaders who are more authoritarian, leaders who are more dictatorial in nature, and that's happening across the world. You saw it in Greece after Brexit. You saw it in the UK as kind of a precursor for Brexit and following Brexit. You saw it in Italy in the rise of La Liga and following Berlusconi. You're seeing it here in the United States with Trump. We're seeing it in the Philippines with Duterte. We saw it in Brazil with their recent election of Bolsonaro as their president. Individuals who are much more conservative, much more extreme, much more authoritarian in their leadership style. And I think that what's happening globally, it impacts how the world is seeing leaders and how the world is perceiving the problems that need to be addressed and how to best address those problems. I think that my concern is that this larger discourse surrounding leadership is going to affect and is already having an impact on how we see leadership and educational leadership at the local level. And we as a field are facing so many different problems and pressures, even within the United States: policy pressures, productivity pressures, privatization pressures, charterization pressures, standards pressures, alternative routes to certification, you name it. There's so many different pressures that we're facing as a field. And if we don't take time to step back and analyze what's happening at that macro level, what's happening globally, my concern is that, we can fall so readily and so easily into this kind of tougher leadership, back to basics, make schools great again, whatever, logic that is happening globally. So the reason why I want to run for UCEA president and for the future of, is for us to really carve out a different vision for educational leadership, and for us to really kind of rethink as a field what's happening at this macro level. I think that we owe it to ourselves We owe it to our profession. We owe it to the children with whom we work. We owe it to each other to not pursue that kind of same kind of leadership style that is kind of taken over the world. And we can do different, and we should do different in our schools and as an organization.
Well said. Dr. López, thank you so much for your time and your very thoughtful responses. This interview will be archived on the UCEA YouTube channel. Listeners can access or share the interview at any time. We also encourage listeners to post comments and questions on this interview in the comment section on the UCEA YouTube channel. Thank you and goodbye.